And we appreciate your willingness to come and express opinions and help in our decision-making efforts. We're going to start the meeting tonight by asking Councilmember Barker to lead us in an invocation or give us a thought or both, and then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right.
Councilmember Barker?
Yep, we'll start with the opening prayer. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this evening. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to gather as city council members, mayor, staff, and citizens in North Ogden. Please bless that we'll be able to be led and that we can be guided by thee and making good conscious decisions, and that we can do what's best for our community. Bless us with civility and that we can do the best that we can. And these things we say in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Barker. Appreciate that. The agenda was published, I believe, on Thursday. You've had a chance to, I think, look at the agenda, hopefully. At this point in time, if there's anything on the agenda that you feel creates a conflict of interest regarding your vote this evening, now would be the time to declare that. Councilmember Barker, sorry, Pulver.
It's not a declaration per se, but it's just the fact that I was part of SWAT as a coach and way back when it started. So I don't know if it's a conflict of interest per se, but it's just something that.
You don't have a passionate or financial situation you can't.
Nope, I got
overcome?
out. So I'm
Okay,
good.
you're good. You're good. But thank you. Thank you for letting us know. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll now go into our active agenda. We'll seek public comments at this point in time. And we have two opportunities for public comments at the beginning of the meeting and at the end of the meeting. I would ask those who would like to comment this evening would step up to the podium here and state your name, and if you're a resident of North Ogden. And I would ask that you limit to your comments to no longer than 5 minutes. So if anyone would like to step up to the podium, now would be the time to do so.
Bob Barker, North Ogden, deal. Couple of things. First, I need to offer an apology to the people who misunderstood. I'm glad Neil called me today and we had a long discussion about the park. I'm grateful he did that because I didn't understand what was taking place for sure. I had the impression that was what was going to be presented, that was going to be it. You know, your vote, if you said, if you agree, all agreed with it, that's going to be the park. I didn't, that's the way I thought I saw it, didn't understanding. It's just an infrastructure. The other things can be added to it later that we may want to do, like the historical part or stuff like that can be added later. And that took a lot of stress off of me and it changed my opinion really quick. And I appreciate you, Neil, for calling me on that. And otherwise I'd come here a little upset. I'm not anymore. Thank you. I'm okay with what's on there and what is being done, you know. And I'm grateful for Neil that we had a meeting with my brothers about the soccer fields and that, and we thought it'd be a great compromise to get that park being used and get it open for that. And I appreciate that. I just want to make that clear. Sorry if I made some misunderstandings on text and stuff. They can kick me later. I'll be outside. I'll try not to scream. But anyway,
We use the
thank you.
police tasers.
What's that?
We use the police tasers and strap people to the flagpole, but we'll let you off tonight.
Well, it's not cold enough for me to stick to it, so you'll have to wait.
So thanks, Scott.
But
And,
anyway, thank you, Neil, for
Yeah,
that phone call today.
yeah, and just to clarify, obviously, as I mentioned to Scott, this isn't the final plan. There's no descriptions on there of what the boundaries will look like.
Right?
There's no definition of what the trees look like. But this is the direction we're going to head if the council so approves it. I think Scott talked about, could there be some discussion about maybe tweaking the location of it. But in looking at this, and I just want to clarify a couple things in this discussion, is first of all, we created a committee called Build Barker Park.
Mhm.
I think maybe it got a little out of hand. Their responsibility was simply to raise money, to get donations, and to get volunteer laborers. There was never any assignment for involvement in design. I've said the more hands you get in the pot, the less likely it's going to be to take place.
Correct.
And yeah, can there be tweaks to this? But we need to start moving forward with a plan that shows infrastructure and the general direction we want to head with this park. And by the way, John confirmed to me that the overlook where the Indians camped is still in its original spot on the drawings. Yeah, there's no splash pad, there's no zip line, and there's no botanical gardens.
Right.
Because we have to look at this as long-term maintenance and risk to the city. And so, yeah, there are some changes, but
Yes.
you're right. I mean, there's going to be still more work to do on this with what the Boweries look like, what kind of trees, what kind of flowers, those type of things. So I'm glad we had the chance to talk, because if you look at it, it's not as that detail. So
Well, it has my support. I know when Councilman Dalpas was running the committee, we went through and a lot of those things we removed are still listed on there. I'm sure they'll be taken off because we went through that, took time to go through and things, no, can't do, cost too much. We went through that, but they're still there. I'm sure that'll be taken care of.
Yeah.
Okay,
well, there may be some things that, you know, are left on there. I mean, I, as we discussed, Scott, we surely want to be good citizens
Mhm.
and try to fulfill the intent of the thought process. But technically, right, as we agreed, the park is owned by the city. But that doesn't mean we're not going to try to be accommodating.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
No,
So anyway, thanks.
no, anyway, yeah, I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Neil's put a lot of time and effort into this of us and it worked out well. And like I said, the compromise for those 2 soccer fields, we felt was worth it to get the park moving and get it used. I know it's starting to fit in with the conservation easement, but we felt it was a good compromise.
Yeah.
Be able to do that. And the location, it'll just be good. Thank you, Neil.
I think we talked about the intent was we want this to be the jewel of the city. And we want
Correct.
people to use it. And we have to have things that'll draw them there. So,
That will get those kids there,
yeah.
a little screaming, a little yelling.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Reed Miller, North Ogden. Hey, the meeting here is mainly for our local city. However, I want people to be aware that there's something that affects all of us, and that is our state legislative session. And just a reminder that it begins on the 21st of this month, January, and goes through the 7th of March. But there are a lot of things, a lot of bills, a lot of things that affect us all. So I wanted everyone to be aware of that. 21st of January through the 7th of March.
Thank you, Reed. Anyone else?
So today I received a copy of this.
What's your name for the record?
Oh, sorry, Peggy Barker of Barker Park. I received this and I say no. My parents' contract said it was not a sports park. Now I've been told that that's the part with the amphitheater and the island, but we've also called this Barker's Nature, Heritage, and Legacy Preserve. But here we just have sports, soccer, pickleball, basketball. Why? Can't that be somewhere else? That this was supposed to be a family area, a place for walking. If all this happens, I'm not going to walk up there. Why? Why would I want to walk around with a bunch of soccer games going on, pickleball going on? It's a waste. It's a waste of this area. It's a waste of what this can be. That it should be a beautiful area. It should be nature. The deer should be able to be there, the fox, the other animals there, and we should be able to walk through there and just enjoy the natural beauty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to comment this evening?
Philip Swanson, excuse me, North Ogden resident. A couple of things. On item number 6, the discussion on new policy for sidewalk clearings. I don't think we should be giving a general exemption, whether it's cul-de-sacs or any other place. I do understand though, because I live at the end of a cul-de-sac and in the heavy winters, I've had piles of snow that are 3 times the size and twice the height of my Jeep, and it's been fun to drive up on top. And that does get pushed over onto the sidewalk, and that would be difficult to clear and to expect. So maybe an exception that in those circumstances, more of a situational exception rather than a blanket exception, that when we do have those heavy winters and the snow that has to be stored and there's nowhere really to put it on a cul-de-sac, that it gets pushed over, that maybe an exception there can be made. And then on item number 7, the North Ogden Youth City Council funding change proposal, I read through that and man, those volunteers are amazing. They are, I've been involved in council in previous years and have been to many of those activities. I'm reminded, though, that the youth council advisors are really very similar to a scoutmaster, a soccer coach, a baseball coach, a football coach, a Girl Scout leader, a young women's leader, that there are a lot of hours that are put in, but that going in, and it is a volunteer basis. I believe that should stay a volunteer, that $6,000 a year for a couple of volunteers is in a budget that we already have that's exceptionally tight and continues to be tight. We've continued to have property tax increases because of the inflation and the other expense increases. I really feel like that should remain a volunteer. I understand, been involved in it from the sports side, the scouting side, the youth council side. I understand intimately the number of hours that it takes and the commitment there, but I don't believe it should be a paid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Anyone else?
I'm Don Barker, formerly of North Ogden. For me, it's good to see the park finally being pushed. It's been a little over 25 years since it was sold to the city to become open space. You're right, it was never supposed to be sports and stuff, but in meeting with the mayor, I think that's the only way we're going to get it done because the city doesn't have the money to put in a couple of soccer fields. I just hope they're pushed closer together so that it can have more things towards the south and west for families and heritage and things that will bring the families there besides that. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
I have to apologize for my Christmas present from my wife. She wanted to make certain I knew who was boss in the family all the time. I'm here to speak about Barker Park, and I have a couple questions.
What's your name?
Oh, Grant Protzman. There we go. Thank you. Can I ask a couple questions? at this
Yeah, you
point?
may not get answers, but you're welcome to ask questions.
Okay, very good. This would be for the mayor. In our conversation today, you said that by and large, the plans for the island that the Bill Barker Park Committee had designed would be able to be put in place. Is that?
Yeah, I was
We have
told, and
that
John, correct
flexibility.
me on this one, is basically what was taken out is the splash pad and the zip line.
Right,
Correct.
okay.
That the others, but let me just refresh, Bill Barker Park Committee has no responsibility for design.
Absolutely.
Theirs was for getting equipment, raising funds and getting volunteer labor.
Right,
But my understanding is, John, and somebody said, well, the camp being where the Indians camped is no longer there. Well, I checked with John when I got here. It's on there. But anyway, that's what I was told in the design is the island primarily stayed the same other than the splash pad because of the maintenance cost
right.
and the vandalism associated with it. And the zip line was taken out because of risk to the city on
Sure.
liability. But
Sure.
other than that, John, what else, I guess, Grant, are you saying in the 5 minutes you have?
No, I just
What
wanted.
else
to
is
make-
missing
I
off
just
there?
wanted to make sure that we didn't see the terraced flower beds and so on there. And I just want to be sure that we can put.
And they
those
may
in
not be there
place.
long-term because the city has to look at who's going to maintain those.
Right, right.
And, there's been a lot of talk about raising money for maintenance, but
Yeah.
I don't think we've seen any money come in.
Well, and as long as we have the option to put that in, I think
Oh.
we'll be able to get the money for maintenance because it was
Oh.
largely coming from folks who sponsored those different elements.
At that point in
know.
time, if you raise the money and there's a way to maintain it, we surely want a
Okay.
beautiful park.
Okay, that'll be
But-
good.
Yeah. We've got to look at it long-term of what the
Yeah.
maintenance is and making sure it stays beautiful because I've seen parks that aren't maintained,
Right.
weeds
Right.
all over.
So have I.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Next question.
The next question is about Chicken Coop Trail. Now, I don't see that left on there at all, and that was kind of a major part of the heritage aspect that we wanted to develop there.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about that because that didn't appear to be given any attention whatsoever.
And John, help me on that one. The only thing that I was aware of is we couldn't have the parking as requested because of non-compliance with ADA.
So
Right.
I'm gonna write these components down, and when we get to that, I can show where those are at. I mean,
Okay.
I still show a trail in that area. It hasn't been named, but we can talk about,
Okay.
there is a feature in that area that's a trail, a loop. But it doesn't show like, hey, we're gonna have these picnic benches here and
Right.
things like that, which are all things that can be incorporated as we go to
Because
build.
this is.
Okay, that
the
makes me
30,000
feel more
foot.
comfortable as long as the minutes reflect that, that has some flexibility associated with it versus the plan that's on there now. Last, I think that we have a unique opportunity to do something really special with this area in terms of pioneer heritage, Native American or Indigenous peoples' heritage, et cetera. And I hate to see us lose that opportunity without fully exploring whether or not we can really make it happen. So to me, that's a big piece of this. And teachers and educators I visited with will be more than happy to bring people by and take advantage of the sites from up there on Chicken Coop Trail for educational purposes, et cetera, as well as kind of the orchard there and the other elements. And Rod's here to answer any questions about what it'll take to maintain the orchard and the flower beds. But I think we're cool.
Yeah, I don't think we're getting into the flower bed detail tonight,
Okay.
but my understanding is, John, the indigenous, where the Indians camped is still there in the exact same place.
Okay.
On
Yeah.
Fruitland Drive.
And we had envisioned putting in that area Native American kinds of games for the kids to play, and down in the
Right.
Pioneer area, Pioneer games.
Just like
for
you
the
missed
kids to
this,
play.
it's like I said, you
Okay,
can tell this isn't the final design because there's
Good.
no
Okay.
architectural drawings of what the
super.
bathrooms look like,
Right, yeah.
there's no architectural drawings of what the
Well,
boweries look like.
And now we've got.
There's nothing that says what
yeah,
kind of trees are going to be here.
Right, yeah.
But we can
Thank you.
debate that for the next 20 years like we have so far
Right, right.
and end up in the same place.
Yeah. No,
It's
but
time to
we've
get
got an
something
outline of
going.
those pavilions and so on, then we can go forward trying to raise money plus 40% to take care of
Yeah,
those.
we know where they're
Thank
going to be located. We know what the infrastructure looks like. So
Good.
yeah, it gives us a
Okay,
roadmap to
thank you.
look at.
And understanding that flexibility, then we're cool with going ahead.
Yeah.
I do have concerns in the north part.
But
about
once
how much
again,
space this soccer
That flexibility is based upon what the city decides
hopefully it's based upon what we can do in
Yeah,
terms of
with
raising
input,
raising
but the
money. with
final
the-
decision lies with the city council.
Absolutely,
I just want to make that clear.
absolutely.
So,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
all right. Anyone else this evening? All right, we're going to move along then. We're going to hear from our friends at SWAT. And they're going to talk to us about their concerns about the fee schedule. And I think we have some representatives here, so thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Is it all right if we pass out, give you guys some little information?
Well, I thought you were just going to say, is it okay if you passed out?
No.
Say, no, but
That's
we'll take,
later.
we'll take handouts. We'll
In
take
a little bit.
handouts.
Yes.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. Well, I'm Darren Rumsey, and this is my wife, Andrea.
Welcome, Darren and Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We are here to talk about the recreation soccer program here in North Ogden. We are currently, the stewards of it, run it, keep it going. So I'll just give a little bit of background. My wife and I have been, running the recreation soccer program for about 6 years, in the North Ogden area. Before us, it was, AYSO. And then when they pulled out, we kind of took over running the program and kept it going. So the purpose of our visit here is to talk about, the proposed, or maybe I don't know if it's proposed still, but the fee increases for renting the parks to use for the program. And when we definitely understand that there's increased costs and all that kind of stuff. And so, we're not here to, say with no increases, or anything like that, but we are here to discuss the proposal that you guys have in place and how that will affect the program. Just to give you a little bit of information, a little bit of overview of our program. Most of the information we put on that sheet, which fields we use, what days we use the fields, what times they're being used, that kind of stuff. So our program in the North Ogden area, we have approximately about 1,500 players in this area that play in the rec program. We offer a very affordable opportunity for the youth to play soccer because we just want kids out there playing and experiencing the outdoors and sport, and so we want to make it so that cost isn't, a decision they have to make. It's just if they want to play, they can come play, and it's very affordable for everybody. So just as a reference, from our U4s, about 3.5 years old up to about 12 years old, it's $79 for the year. So that gets 2 seasons, the spring and a fall season, approximately 14 games. From about 13 years up through our co-ed high school, it's $84 for the same spring and fall season. So it's very reasonable. And just in comparison, some of the programs around that also offer recreation programs, in the surrounding areas. The AYSO that I'd mentioned formerly, their cheapest entry price is $105 for the same thing. So it just kind of gives you a comparison of where we're at versus, what other programs, and they're the next cheapest. Everything else is more expensive than that. So that just kind of gives you a brief background along with information that you have. And so we want to talk now about kind of the impact that the fee increases are going to have on our program. So currently we've been paying approximately to the North Ogden City about $2,100 per season. So we have a fall season and a spring season. So it's approximately $4,200 for the year for the use of the fields that are listed on your program there. And just taking the same amount of usage that we're using now and applying the new fee schedule to that, that would increase from $2,100 per season to $50,000 per season, which would increase it from $4,200 for the year to approximately $100,000 for the year. So obviously that's a massive jump, and quite honestly, it would just end the program because we don't even collect that much money to run the entire program for a year. So just kind of also on a per player basis, what that would do is, you know, like I had mentioned earlier, our fees right now are $79 for the year for the younger kids and $84 for the year for the older kids. We would have to add an additional $70 per kid to cover that cost. So almost doubling what we charge just to pay, you know, to use the parks. So obviously that would change the dynamics of the program if it even was able to, you know, move forward with the price increase. It no longer would just be, you know, a benefit for the citizens of North Ogden just to be able to put their kids in soccer if that's what they wanted to do. Now it becomes a financial thing. Can we afford it? If we have one kid, we could probably afford it, but what if we have 2 or 3 kids? And what about the 3.5-year-old that just wants to get out and run around? They're not really playing soccer, but they want to be part of something, right? With a uniform. And now it's almost $200 for them to play. So that will impact quite a few decisions in the home. So like I had mentioned earlier, you know, our commitment to the community, this isn't, you know, a for-profit thing. We're not out there raking in dollars or anything. We do this because we love the sport. We love soccer. All of our kids play soccer. We have 6 kids and they've all played in the program, and there's a lot of them are still playing in the program. A lot of them are giving back now. They're coaching teams that they don't even have kids on just because they love it. You know, they want the kids to love it. I coach up at Weber High School now on the girls' side. So it's just part of what we do. You know, this is what we do. We have other jobs that we do, you know, with whatever time that's left that we don't put into this program. And so it's just a passion. We want to make sure that it's accessible for everybody to be able to play, and it's not a choice they have to make based on finances. So we do understand, we appreciate everything the North Ogden City has done, the Parks Department, and they've been really good, especially since, you know, we had the flooding a few years ago, and it kind of, you know, 3 out of the 4 parks that we use are retention basins, and they were used as retention basins and not soccer for 1.5 to 2 years. So that put a lot of stress on us because we had to move, you know, 75% of our program to Ogden and Weber County Fairgrounds and other areas, which it worked. But we appreciate, you know, we appreciate David and all of his work that he's done to get the parks back going again, get grass growing again. And we've been able to start playing on some of the fields again, and portions of the field as, you know, they've gotten back in green shape again. So it's been great. We appreciate the partnership. We love working with Becky Godfrey. She's been amazing with scheduling and any conflicts that we've had and that kind of stuff. It's been amazing. So we don't want this program to end, and we don't want to have to just walk away. We want to come up with, you know, some sort of proposal, something that will work so we can continue to offer the program to anybody who wants to do it, and not have to double the cost on them, I guess. So we do understand, you know, the need to, you know, as costs go up, you know, it costs more to maintain things and repair things and that kind of stuff. So we understand that. So I think on one of those pages, we've got a couple options there that we've come up with, things that kind of are in line with how we can afford to do it, and also, you know, in line with what we pay in other areas for field usage. And so for us, I guess the easiest one would just be the option A, because it's just a flat fee per registered kid. And so we don't have to figure out hours and how many hours did we use this park, how many hours did we use that park. That would be the easiest. That one would be $4 per kid per year. So it's $2 per season. And the reason why we kind of broke it down per season is because we usually have more people sign up in the spring than we do in the fall, probably because of football. You know, a lot of kids go play football and then they come over and play soccer in the spring. So that would net approximately about $7,300 a year. So that would be almost a double increase of what we're paying now. Not quite. I don't have the percentage down, but $4,200 to about $7,300. There are some drawbacks on our side of that, but I think that would still be the best option for us. So it's just, we know exactly how much we're paying per kid and we can figure that into the cost. The option B would be a little bit different. It'd just be more on rental of each individual park. The only drawback to that is kind of that's the way that the new proposal is set up already, but it's set up per field as opposed to per park. And the reason why that doesn't necessarily work is because we can take the different age groups use different size fields. And so we can take one park and we could fit 15 fields on it. But then like Mountain View Park, there's only one field on it. But if we're paying the same amount, then now you're paying, an exorbitant amount per game for those fields versus these other fields where you're fitting, 12, 15 fields on it or whatever, and you're paying the same amount. And so, and then the other way that reason why that doesn't necessarily work for us is it's constantly changing from season to season where we need fields, what size we need fields based on the demographics that come through for a particular age group. Sometimes like a U4 age group, we might have enough kids to have 20 different teams. So then we need a certain number of fields for that. But then the next year, there might only be 15 teams at that age, and then that kind of demographic, the age group just kind of moves up through. So it changes the sizes and numbers of the fields that we need. So it's constantly changing. And so we're just always rearranging the park to fit the fields that we need. So for us, if it was an option B, the way we do it in other areas is we just pay a fee for the park, and then we can fit the number of fields on it that we need. And then also there was a mention of per game fee on the schedule as well. And that also doesn't necessarily work for the same reasons. We have a U4 game that might last 30 minutes, but then you have a high school co-ed game that lasts an hour and a half. And so per game, it could be very, very expensive for these little kids to play their game. And so, for option B, which is propose a flat fee for the park for the day. And then we can fit in what we need season to season. One of the other considerations that should be addressed is also the fact that the way it's currently set up, the way we've been doing it, we generally go in and we reserve these 4 parks Monday through Friday and then Saturday. So after school for all the hours and then on Saturday as well. But we don't use them mainly during the week. We really don't use them. And the reason why we do that, and we pay for that out of the program, but it's not for our use, it's for the community's use to go in for the teams, the different teams, and even teams that aren't even in our program can just go use the fields to practice on. And the reason why we do it that way is because in other areas, teams will go in and they'll reserve that field for a 2-hour block, and then nobody else can use it for that 2-hour block. So if there's 5 days a week, you're going to accommodate basically 5 teams. But like with the recreation program and the size of North Ogden and the population here, there's 250 rec teams. There's 15 competitive teams as well. So there's just turns into chaos because everybody's showing up and then one person reserved it. And then all those other teams have no place to practice. And so we went about it this other way and paid for it out of our program so that it stayed as first come, first serve. And so now what happens is you have 10 teams show up and they just divide up the space and they work together because they have no other options. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If we basically switching to either the options A or B would not include us reserving it all week long. And so we would still have that issue. And usually what happens is, somebody will come in and they'll rent the fields or whatever, and you'll get a little bit more revenue, but from the new fee schedule, it was only $10 an hour is what for practices, what was on there, right? Mm-hmm. So really the increase in fees that you'll get from people renting it for practice isn't going to cover the cost of Becky having to manage all those different people and all the complaints that she's going to get phone calls from all the other coaches that don't have a place to practice and to have their little kids able to run around and prepare for games. So there's a lot of chaos involved that may not see when you're putting these proposals together, but it happens everywhere else. And so the solution that we had come up with, what we had been doing, is just reserving all the time and then just letting anybody use it whenever they want, first come, first serve. And you can talk to Becky and she'll probably tell you that when we took over and ran it that way, she gets almost 0 phone calls now, but before it was just a nightmare and a headache, and she did not like it. And the other part that helps us out as well, and that also helps out our coaches and their families and that kind of stuff, is when we have all that time reserved, when we get fields that get flooded or they get rained out, or a coach can't make a game and they have to reschedule, then we have the flexibility to reschedule them when that team is available, when those parents are available, and that coach is available. And so if it goes this other way where we no longer have that time reserved on a first come, first served basis, then we can no longer, it's going to be very difficult, and we'll be using Becky quite a bit to try to find open time to reschedule games, and then also potentially have to move some of these teams that have reserved a field so that we can fit in this, finish out the season. And so it works a lot of different ways. So we do have, Saturdays where we have a lot of teams playing, a lot of games going on, and we have to cancel that whole Saturday, and we have to try to fit them in during the week, which means we got to fit them in 3 or 4 days during that week to get them all fit in from a Saturday. And if the field's not available because other teams are reserving it, then that's going to build. It just won't happen. And our main goal as well for the season is to operate our season during the school year. So we start when school starts, and we want to be done when school is done. That way, because once school's over, everybody's gone. And so that's kind of our, we have to wait for the snow to melt, the fields dry out, and then we can start our spring season. And then that only gives us one Saturday as a flex Saturday, to fit games in before Memorial Weekend hits. And so we use when we have to make up games, we use a lot during the week, and we have that flexibility because. So that's kind of one of the things that we haven't really accounted for in these options, because with the price increase, it's going to be very difficult for us to do that, be able to pay for that.
Hey, council, what questions do you have? Councilmember Polar?
Isn't SWAT on the list for a partnered for the city, such that they would?
We had them on the partner list because of the $2,100 not being enough to cover the cost. They were getting the field at a discount compared to what we'd call anyone who came in off the street would try and rent it for by the hour.
Okay, so is the new fee part of that or not? I mean, I guess what's the
The new fee, when it was adopted back in July, was everyone pays the same. And so that in theory, they weren't getting special treatment at that point, other than they got a priority, meaning they could reserve 6 months ahead of time so that they could get their games and stuff set up, as opposed to waiting till sooner. So I don't want to say normal people because they're normal, but the folks who aren't associated with the league, we typically, they can't reserve it 6 months. It's kind of that 4 and 5 is the earliest months ahead of time, so that the organized leagues have a chance to get what they need.
Okay, I guess my point is that to me, I thought they would get an advantage because they're on a list. I guess that's, so you're saying they're not getting them.
It's a reservation advantage at this point.
Okay.
And that's based on the conversation with the council past the fee back in June, I think, or August.
Councilmember Dalpaz?
I seem to recall from the conversation back in the summer, I thought part of the reason that we increased the fees was to match what Pleasant View had listed. I don't think it was anyone's intention to put this crazy burden on the SWAT program, but it seems like, I don't know, does SWAT utilize, I can ask a question of them. Does SWAT utilize Pleasant View currently at all?
Yeah, we use Shady
We
Lane
use
there.
Shady Lane,
Okay.
but same situation. We rent the park, and then we literally have like 7, 8 fields set up there. There's some of our younger age groups there. So we rent the park for the day,
Okay.
and we have a flat fee with them. And then like he mentioned, it's just not per field. It's the
The
park.
park.
Okay.
For practices also?
First come, first serve there. They have like.
During the
T-ball
week, they
things
rent
going
it
on.
out. They use it for their programs, softball program, T-ball programs,
so
and
in the
then football. So we don't use it during the week. We only use that field on a Saturday.
Saturdays.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, got it. I guess those are my first initial questions.
What do you pay to rent the Shetty Lane Park?
It's $250 for the day for
$200 $250 for the day.
for the north and south field, so the entire.
And I think that's kind of what this basis was, but I don't think anybody recognized it was $100,000 and would kill a program by any means. What, just off the top of your head, what percentage of the participants are from North Ogden, would you say, in the registration?
The numbers that we gave you are probably 95% North Ogden residents.
Okay.
We also have a program. We also run a program in Far West area. And so that's a separate,
So this probably is Pleasant View and North Ogden primarily.
yeah, there's probably
We
Pleasant
have
View
about 2,500
total.
players and 1,500 are in the North Ogden area. We have about 1,000 in our Far West League.
But the North Ogden area would probably encompass Pleasant View and
Probably,
North Ogden.
I'm sure
right?
Harrisville,
But a high percentage you're saying are,
but the majority of them. So I guess it probably wouldn't be 95 or 98, maybe around
And
85.
do you guys utilize Harrisville City's parks at all?
We're not currently, we have in the past, but right now in our Far West League, we use Far West Elementary School and Mountain View Park in Far West are the two locations we use for Far West League.
There were parks, but right now I think, I don't know what happened to one of the parks. They sold it to a developer or it's a retention pond also.
Oh,
There used to be
yeah.
a golf course next to it and the golf course got sold to a developer.
Yeah, I
and
know
so
which one you're talking
We
about.
haven't been able to use it for a while.
That by Orton, right?
so John, I
Not
have a
Orton.
question.
Millennium.
Millennial.
And it goes back to when the floodings took place and the number of complaints we got about holes. Like people were, do we have any indemnification or insurance? Or if somebody gets hurt playing SWAT in our parks?
So well, SWAT has their own forms, indemnifications and waivers. And we don't make them sign anything. We do have, well, that's not true. We do have a reservation form, which has a similar like indemnification. I'm not sure if I remember what their insurance limits are, but I imagine being a national organization, they're pretty high.
It's $1
Meaning-
million.
Yes, they've got $1 million policy, which is what we require for people to rent the parks.
Are we a named insured on that, or do we even have a copy of the policy?
We're not a named insured. It's
Should
just
we
part of the
be?
conversation.
See, that's my concern. I don't think we want to put
Yeah, you
this
can-
out of business, but I
We can
think
get
we
you
ought
the
to make
policy with
sure.
your name on it.
Right.
You
I think
are
we ought to
named
make
on it.
sure that
Okay.
we're limiting our
Yeah.
liability because, we got a lot of calls about, the holes in the, and I appreciate you making the comments that it's been improved. Its primary purpose is retention, no doubt about it, but, John, did you have a?
Well, and we did, council, we did just grab Pleasant View's ordinance and bring it over. And you've heard that Pleasant View doesn't, I don't want to say they don't follow their ordinance because that's not true, right? But they do, instead of looking at it on a per field basis, they look on it as a park basis. Even though it technically says field in it, but moving that direction would probably be easier for staff as well to say, hey, for a park, for soccer, we're going to just rent it on a per cost. Whatever the price is still something up to the council. And just the reality of the $100,000 is obviously not what anyone intended. However, the reality of the cost to maintain the park is probably close to $100,000, but they're not the only ones to get the benefit from it, right? And so there's all these little nuances that are coming into it, and anything is better than nothing. However, we do want to make sure that if the parks are getting used too much, that we're getting enough money in to recondition them as opposed to the grass over by the skate park. I hate to use that as an example, but it's not worn out in the same way that the baseball, soccer fields, football fields are, because there's not the cleats and stuff there. But so it's all going to be kind of what's the best thing the council feels. Staff doesn't have a recommendation on this. It's just more money is better. But we definitely don't want a program to die because of fees become so oppressive.
What is the registration fee until do they get their shirts and pay for the referees?
So registration includes both seasons, fall and spring, so they have like 14 games. It includes their full uniform, they get shirts, shorts, socks. Includes the equipment to the coaches and, you know, the field rentals, upkeep and whatnot, painting, so that's their
and the
only fee
referees.
for the year, and the ref fees and whatnot, so.
So it's $79 and 84 for the little older kids.
How much are the comp fees?
Well, that varies. Because there's a lot of different organizations that we're not a part of, and some of them are very, very expensive, but they generally aren't playing in this area. You know, the comp fees that do play in this area, they're probably around $350 for the year total, encompasses, you know, everything.
So you don't run a comp program, or you do?
Oh, we do. SWAT does have competitive teams,
Okay.
and our fees are anywhere from about $350 to $450 for the year for the competitive players.
I
And-
imagine, John, that
And what?
soccer's the heaviest user of the parks.
Outside of our own programs. Yeah. I mean, they
Okay.
probably do put more kids in the parks than football, baseball, kickball to get combined. But on a reservation basis, we probably use more hours for our programs than soccer does in the total. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just inquiring because, you know, that's what I see is the heavy use of the soccer. But Councilmember Pulver, did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say that the only reason there's a significant jump when you talk comp is the fact that the coaches are licensed and there's a lot more travel and et cetera, et cetera. But because I was part of both SWAT and AYSO, I don't know if anybody remembers Mary Beth Ford, but all of that stuff that transacted there, it was kind of a loss to see AYSO go, but it was just was its time. I don't know if that was the right word, but to have something I think is very important. And so we need to come up with like John said, we need to, you know, it's costs a lot, especially when we have a high water year and we need to repair something that's almost unrepairable. But anyways, I think one of these two proposals should work. And like John said, if we can tweak the fee schedule such that we can figure that out, so we're not, you know, but SWAT is a partner with the city. So to me, that's one of the biggest things that we've already documented that. So next stage is to say, how are we helping our partner? So.
Okay, Councilmember Watson.
Thank you. Thank you for all that you do and for your really thought out presentation. My family has benefited so much from your program, from what you've done. And in fact, I had a kid who used to play for your son, Dylan, and loved that. And I really support, I am an advocate for recreation and affordable recreation, and I support what you're doing. I think it's crucial that we provide those opportunities for our young people and make them affordable. I had a couple of questions. If we were at 4,200 annually and it moves to one of these options that you suggested, then what does that do to the pricing that you have currently at 79 and 84?
We would probably just do a couple dollar increase next year for registration, just to help cover that cost.
And what guess would you give? I know this is a hard question. How often are these fields used in the weekday by teams that don't have anything to do with SWAT? You've covered the cost of the practice fields, reserving them, and other teams come in and use those.
I think different parks are different percentage use. Orton Park gets used a lot by other organizations because they're closer to Ogden geographically. So I know there's another organization that's encompasses the northern Ogden city area that uses there quite a bit. How much they filter up into more North Ogden, I'm not 100% sure, but I know there are teams that still use those other parks.
I can see how, like you said, when you worked it out with Becca, that it's easier to reserve all the fields for the whole week than to try to fight over them with the comp teams. I can totally see that. I've got kids who play on these teams, and there's probably no way for the fee of using the field for practice during the middle of the week to be translated to this group that doesn't ever have games in North Ogden, so they would never have a way to come and help pay for the restoring of the fields. So I can see why you came up with this plan, and it makes complete sense to me. 250 rec teams and 15 comp teams to share the fields. I completely agree that we need to have a place for them to be able to practice and a way for them to be able to practice. So I support these options. I don't know what staff would recommend and how it will turn out, but I think let's definitely make it a realistic, my perspective is let's make it a realistic cost when it translates to the youth who are trying to find recreation.
Okay, what other questions do you have, council? Okay, I see no other questions. The agenda item indicates that we're looking to approve the fee schedule.
So
I think it says a motion to set the fee schedule discussion for the January 28th meeting.
yeah, so because we need to bring it back as a resolution, but we didn't want to, we can't, it's hard to tweak it in a meeting, so we'd want to bring it back. Yeah.
And why would we have to have a motion to have it on the agenda, John? I'm just quite curious.
Just because we put it as discussion or action. And it's also why it's a voice vote to just say yay or nay.
Yeah.
So that council can
Bring it
say,
back.
yes, let's do it, or, we need more time than that. Or we don't want to talk about it again. It's up to you.
Yeah, I think it's obvious we want to
Make one more comment.
that.
One more concern
Yeah.
with us is I don't know if this fee schedule has already been approved and it's already in place or not. But our program, we register once for the year, which already has taken place. And so our budget is already set through this, spring season. And so we don't have the money to pay the new fee schedule for this spring season.
Yeah.
And normally right now we're working with Becky to reserve the field so we can start
Yeah.
getting things set up.
Actually, I think the $100,000 fee is in place. Actually, I think that was approved, but don't worry about it. But I do think, council, you've got two proposals here. I do believe every so often, though, the fields kind of need to be refurbished. And I don't know if there's some way we can work out maybe every X period of time. There's a.
We do have through our parent
refurbishing it.
organization or umbrella organization that we work, nationwide that has field grant money available we can apply for. So we've done
Yeah.
that in other areas and been able to get $5,000, $10,000.
I think we'd
We
be
were able to
interested
give it
to
to
see what
different
grants
cities
are
that we worked
available.
with.
So if you could maybe send, let's see, Councilmember Barker, I think, is responsible for parks.
Well, yeah, but not recreation.
Oh, but this is a park issue. If you could
This
do
is
that,
already
that'd be
ready.
helpful.
I was ready.
So council, to move this along then, would you, just
Just,
somebody like to make a motion that further discuss this on the 28th?
just one last thing. I won't
Councilmember
be
Dacus.
long. When they mentioned, it seems like an unintended consequence of the blanket scheduling is that we're getting those organizations potentially from Northern Ogden that are utilizing it, and that could be putting a lot of wear and tear. So just anyways, I want to talk about this next meeting or on the 28th or whatever it's going to be.
I believe the others aren't reserving. They're just kind of taking their chances, right?
Yeah.
So that's how they're getting away with it, which,
Well, we put a lot of
Apparently-
money into the equipment, the goals, we mark the fields.
right,
So
but
they
I think
come
the other
there because
guys,
it's
the other
available
guys
to
that come
use.
in and take their chance and don't pay anything, right? Because it's an open park. So that's probably the difference, is that if it's reserved.
They're not
then these guys-
guaranteed.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's my understanding anyway. If you guys reserve the fields,
Well, we reserve it,
Mhm.
but at the same time, we don't want to go out and police it as well. And we don't want to put that burden on you guys to be calling you every week and say, hey, there's this team out there. They're not part of us.
yeah, but if you're paying for it
So
and
it's
they're wear and tear in the field,
true.
we don't want you to have to be police either, but I think we need to know that, a simple call just saying, our reservation's not being honored. I mean, we would do that if somebody reserved a park, a Bowery, and they showed up, somebody else was there. we'd make sure the reservation got honored. So we don't want you to be the police. But we do want to make sure we're treating you fair. So, okay, we have a motion then to further discuss this and consider the options as presented on the 28th. Do we have a motion?
Did someone motion it?
I'll make a motion. I motion
I'm
that
not sure
we,
if somebody made a motion because you wanted to make a comment.
Alpazar was a comment.
His was a
He's
comment.
ready to make the motion.
I'm doing it. I'll make a motion that we resume this conversation with recommendation from staff on the 28th of this month.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Severing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, see you on the 28th. Thank you for your time and effort putting into the presentation. Okay, we're now on item number 4. This discussion will be led by our city manager and attorney, Mr. John Call. This discussion will be about the inclusion of soccer fields in the Barker Park plan. So John, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And as the mayor mentioned, this is our 50,000-foot view that identifies some of the major components or most of the major components. And Eric Casperson, our city engineer, took the time or we asked him to, and he willingly did it during work hours, to make sure that we could get water, sewer, those sorts of things to work. And so he took the plan that the Barker Park Committee from 2014, 15, 16 timeframe put together, took out some components like we talked about, and then included the soccer field components. To the mayor's point, this is not the end all be all. This is what it's going to look like. There'll be a sidewalk that goes exactly like this and angles up, but it'll become the guiding document so that as the Parks Department starts looking at what to include, they can come in the budget process to present to the council and essentially say, here's the Bowery we suggest, it's going to cost this much and we need 4 of them or 3 of them. But the council is going to have a lot of ability in the future to kind of gauge the expenses, although I do think that this is an attainable plan and that it includes the type of things that the park will need to succeed as far as the physical infrastructure, parking, Boweries, obviously green space, and those sorts of things. These other components that we've been talking about are part of the goals of the city. It was mentioned by the SWAT folks that they have friends who maybe help build soccer fields, and we have 2 soccer fields that aren't in a detention basin being proposed here. So that may be a conversation we can have. But there are the components. There are playgrounds in here. There's the learning. I'm going to zoom in on these as we talk about them. So there's the learning building. It's been talked about that being a remake of the cannery from, I forgot the name.
The packing.
Campbell Packing Shed. Sorry, Plain City has the cannery. We had a packing shed up here. There'll be Boweries. That just jumped. There'll be some sort of an amphitheater, a learning amphitheater, not lights, not sound, but just a place. There's a whole lot of blank landscaping in here that hasn't been defined. So if the appropriate volunteers get together and create a natural area or a botanical garden area, that'll be a discussion that if we feel like we can sustain it with the volunteers and the donations, then I think those are things that the parks groups would be okay with or would support, not just be okay, but support. Chicken Coop Hill over here, this area includes it, it most likely won't be a concrete walking path, but you can see the little knockouts for connections to picnic tables or whatever. There's a whole lot of detail that still needs to end up in this plan, but I think the essential bones of this plan include the components that have always been talked about. Number 4 right here is that Native American encampment. There's just all these components that are still in this plan, the major change is a lot of the larger space that used to be for either the splash pad, which used to be located right here, or the high adventure playground was right here, have now been shifted around to accommodate soccer fields. Up in this area, there was kind of a sculpture garden was one of the proposed concepts. So this is just nailing the plan down to give staff and to have and the volunteers, meaning staff will create plans, come to the council to ask for money to spend, and then work with the volunteers to organize the labor, organize the donations, and get the improvements put on the ground in a way that makes the most sense. This is a massive undertaking. It's still 20 acres of unfinished park, 25. Well, I should be including the hollow. Yeah. I guess I was looking at the landscaped area, but there's a lot to do. There's some funding that is becoming available in the sense that impact fees. If the council would like to, we can move everything we get in impact fees to a project like this. And there are other grants and opportunities out there. I know that I told Eric this morning to apply for a grant to reinforce the bank of the creek that comes through here. There's a state grant that's currently, I think the application is due on Friday, and we're going to apply for that to just start chipping away at these little pieces. But the critical thing, and this is for the council members who are here for 2 more years, 4 more years, however you look at it, is that we need to start the long-term financial plan and get components done. The way the park is designed, we have some opportunity to do some components with a small amount of injection of money with volunteers and other efforts. When you get to this northern section, it's going to take some major contributions, major city involvement, and hopefully those contributions will be large enough that we can finish the entire north area at the time at the time we're ready to do it. If someone walked in with $20 million tomorrow, we could do the whole park, I would anticipate. But Daddy Warbucks, I haven't met him. So anyways, this is 50,000 foot view. When this goes to ground, it'll be that 1,000-foot view. So there's 5 steps between where we're at today and before we start digging dirt. Although I will say that I think there are some sections, let's use Chicken Coop as an example, that if we have volunteers and donations ready and Jamie and Dave and Eric, the city engineer, say, hey, that's a good plan, let's go for it. There shouldn't be any reason why we can't if there's not a budget request based on the approval of this plan. Does that make sense? But when we need money, that obviously is coming to the council. Again, unless Dave's uncle Warbucks is able to. They say Dave, I meant Blake. Blake's uncle Warbucks shows up with the check and we can just finish it all. So anyways, did that answer all the questions? I think I went through all of the ones that I identified from some of the comments earlier, the components that are still there. And again, reemphasize that there's a big drive to keep the heritage component. I will say, I know Peggy made a comment about the name of the park. I still feel very strongly that that's something the council should name, although the council should feel free to take input from anyone. But there's just certain things that the city needs to be the one who makes the final call on, just to keep it in the elected officials' hands. But the Heritage Preserve, it might be a great name, but that's up to you. 5 voting members and 1 consultant.
To give an example of this, we've talked about going out and trying to talk to major donors who may give us some money to kick this thing off. For instance, I've had this idea of going to a particular individual to name one of the Boweries after one of his good friends who lived in the city and has passed away. In initial discussions, he said he would like to honor this individual, but I can't go and say, hey, I need $250,000 for a Bowery, because I know what they're going to say. Well, can you give me a general idea of what we're talking about here? We've been approached by a major corporation that wants something from the city. We'd obviously have to have that discussion, but I made it very clear if they want to have the discussion, it's going to involve a major contribution to help us with the park, which they said we do that regularly. Now, whether we go along with the plan or not, but there's options out there that we have to have something to start showing people. And I don't think they're going to say, well, tell me what kind of tree that's going to be. They're not going to ask that. They're not going to say, oh, well, where's the flower beds? You know, they're going to look and say, hey, this is a major park. This is the center of the city. This is the jewel of the city. And most likely that's going to attract their attention. But we have nothing at this point in time. Zippo. John.
I just want to make sure the whole room knows before the rumors start. The major corporation is not looking for any density or zoning or anything like that from the city. They just have some infrastructure needs that they might need the city's help with. Or not financial help, but permission. So just so that it's not like a gas line or anything like that. I hate to be so cryptic, but I just don't want people thinking that.
Didn't you say they were going to pump oil or something?
It's something that residents would not know was there.
Yeah.
They just.
But there's some clarifications we really have to make. But once again, you can't start something without some type of plan. And, we surely can wait to plan out every idea. And then, at my funeral, you can just put a thing on the grave says, hey, we're still talking about this. Trying to figure out what color the tree should be and where the flowers are going to be. But you got to start somewhere. Because if you have no plan, you have nothing to start action. So, Councilmember Watson.
I love seeing the first concept drawing, realizing that it'll probably change as things go on. But I love that to me, it seems like there's a mix of both sports opportunities and the natural preserves and the history, honoring the history there. And I would definitely advocate for this to move forward so that, especially as quick as we can, so that we don't lose those sponsor opportunities.
Councilmember Pulver.
I guess there's a couple things I just want to make sure that we're documenting throughout this process. I know we're 50,000 foot level, but to be honest, I've had so many citizens talk about the dog park and, hey, since we're making this new park, can we push this over into the new park? Because I'll use their words, not mine, sucks. I don't use the dog park, but they say it's horrible. And I don't know if there's an area that we can just keep that a detention pond and, actually move the dog park to something that's going to be more enjoyable. Just the thought there. And then the other one was, I think you can't, I'm not saying you poo-pooed, but you definitely pushed aside saying it's going to cost too much to do the botanical gardens. But I think that's one of the major features in the island that we need to keep. And we'll figure out how to pay for it through volunteers or whatever. But I think that's something that is kind of huge that separates cities from, just a normal city to a awesome city. And then making sure that we do have some of the awesome ideas that Bill Barker Park has on some of the other island issues. But like you said, get it on paper, get it rolling. I just want to make sure that we don't have, paths going to the back of the Santa's house and all of a sudden ending.
Yeah.
But, there's certain things we need to fix. Lots of bridges going over waterways. So, there's a lot of stuff, but
There's definitely a lot of stuff.
let's
There's
get it
no-
going.
No doubt about it. There's a lot of stuff. And, if Bill Barker Park Group comes and says, hey, we've got $1 million to maintain the botanical gardens, I'm sure the council would say, great, it's a beautiful thing. Let's take a look at it and see what works. But I haven't seen a dime come in yet.
Well, volunteer hours
And
basically.
And let me just remind again, the Bill Barker Park has no assignment for design.
Correct.
Their responsibility was to raise money, get volunteers, and get donations of things. So it's kind of like the planning commission, they're a recommending body.
Correct.
And this group will make the final decision. But yeah, I mean, if we want to wait and get all the details in here, frankly, as I said, I think that that'll be the last hurrah of this effort because we'll miss opportunities. Okay, any other comments before we seek a motion? Councilmember Dowpass.
Question, since it sounds like yourself and John met with the Barker Trust or a few individuals, is that correct?
I did, met with three brothers that are trustees of the trust, I believe.
Okay, so it was kind of they all raised their hand and said, we're good with this, and
They actually signed a document.
good
that,
with the soccer component, right?
Yeah. Not that we required that, but I think, you know, if we want to move ahead, we want to move ahead in a cooperative manner, right? Instead of
Sure.
fighting each other. It just takes forever. So
Yeah.
yes, we have a signed document.
Yeah.
By three members of the trust. Can't remember the exact name of it, signed indicating that soccer fields would be something they wouldn't object to. Yes.
Okay.
And that trust is the original organization that, so Carl and Lorna were the original trustees of the trust. The trust was the one who sold it to the city. And so in theory, it's the same corporation that, or not, it wasn't corporation, but same organization that sold the city the ground. It's just a new board of directors, if that makes sense.
And I think, you know, things change over time, right? And in the discussion with the Barker family, the intent they felt their parents were is to have this a center of the city where people come. And there'll be people that want to have walking trails and they'll want to go to the education. There's going to be people that want to come and hang out at the Boweries and maybe shoot some hoops, play a little pickleball. Maybe families will bring their kids to soccer, have a place to, you know, the intent of the Barkers when I talk to them is let's just make sure that we have people that'll come to the park. We're going to invest that kind of money. Let's have people come to the park. Okay, do we have a motion or any further discussion on this?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Severing.
I move that that we include the soccer fields. Is that what we're trying to say here?
To approve the Barker plan to include soccer fields.
Okay. Mayor, I move that we approve in the Barker Park plan, the inclusion of soccer fields per the trustees of the trust and their approval
And the plan as presented tonight.
as presented this evening.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second to Councilmember Severing's motion?
Second?
Second by Councilmember Dowpass. Further discussion?
So
Call.
what's the next step, I guess? Sorry. Can we vote first and then talk about it?
Councilmember says the next step is, Councilmember Barker says the next step is to vote.
Sorry.
I think the next step, frankly, is to start raising money.
Okay.
And as I proposed, and not Councilmember Call, but what are you, John? The city attorney and administrator?
Somebody else.
I don't know, city manager, he's got all kinds of titles. That the council start seriously talking about what the long-range financial plan is on this. You know, there's some opportunities out there that we need to pursue, but this is going to take some money from the city, and where's that going to come from? How are we going to start planning for that? You know, we're planning for other things long-term. If we're serious about the park, then we need to start talking about how we're going to do that too. So I'd say that's the next plans.
Sorry.
No, that's what I would say, but somebody has a better idea. I'm open for that too. Okay, we have a second. We have a motion. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of Councilmember Severing's motion, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number 5. This is a discussion or action on the mid-year targeted adjustments in accordance with John Call's recommendation and findings. Mr. Call, take it away.
Thank you, council. Or mayor. So council, as we've talked about in the past, every 6 months we pull a salary survey and just check the temperature of what's going on. In the most recent one we've polled, we have two goals that we try and meet for employees. One is a minimum, which we want everyone to be at 90% of the market average. So it's not, so that's the average of what employees in their position are actually paid in cities of our size. There are a few exceptions to the city of our size, most notable being police officers. So police officers, we look at a radius around of us to make sure that we're in market competing so that we don't lose officers to Salt Lake where they pay a whole lot more than they do here. However, in that range, that 75 miles that we look, it doesn't end up being so high that we really do end up competing, partly because officers who want to work in a community like ours aren't the same officers who maybe want to work in West Valley. Two different types of policing that occur. In that, it was discovered, or I identified 11 individuals who are low enough below where they should be that I'm recommending that we do a 3% adjustment now, knowing that there'll be a further adjustment coming in July. And then the cost for those 11 is, and I give you there's a 12-month cost, which is about $31,000 for the salary, plus benefits of about $9,000, so it's close to $40,000. The actual budget impact for this fiscal year would be $20,000. And I did send the council the sheet. Obviously, individuals' salaries in the city are public record, but we typically don't broadcast it, particularly because we didn't want to get anyone's hopes up. Last year, we didn't do any targeted increases, mid-year increases, but some of these were low enough percentage-wise, or they were below the 90% number that's our minimum, that I felt like we needed to talk about it. Yeah.
I think, John, you may add to this. We have somewhat contractual obligations on some of these, where we brought someone in, we recruited someone, we published what the salary would be. But in our negotiations, we said, hey, we want to take a 6-month look and see. And if you're performing after 6 months, then we would make the adjustment to what the posting said for what basically is what they asked for. I think there are a couple people on here who have taken on additional responsibilities. That it's not necessarily a market movement, but it's I don't want to call it a promotion, but it's a different job responsibility. They've taken on either supervision or additional assignments. So there's 3 components to this, I believe, that John, you're talking about.
Yes.
Component 1 is those that we're legally obligated to. 2, that's not a market movement in the market. It's additional assignments. And then there are others you're saying you feel the market has moved.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Would that be proper segmentation?
Yes, that's very good. And that's very helpful, because for those first 2 groups, the contractual and the promotion, I mean, in some ways, those are foregone conclusions and probably within my power to approve. But I wanted the council to be aware of there's things going on that aren't, I just don't want you to think that I'm willy-nilly signing stuff over here and not keeping you aware of the situation. That 3rd group is the one that, you know, I think from a staff perspective and a city manager perspective, that some of these are far enough behind that we won't be able to catch them up in July if we don't start now. And a couple of these are, you know, I did send council the list. There are some of these that are, I don't want to say they're some of our lowest paid employees, but in theory, they're in the lower quartile. And, you know, a 70% or a 70-cent increase to them or $1 increase to them makes a much higher difference than to some of those are at the top of the scale that are closer to their range. There were others who were off the range, but they were technically at 100% of the market. They're just some of our high performers where I said, okay, look, they're at 100%. I think they can wait the 6 months. If we wanted to catch everybody now, that'd be great, but that's not the recommendation I'm coming with. And I've talked with Dave about this, and anyways, I think we've scaled it back to a logical number. However, it is the budget and it's money, it's taxpayer dollars, it's sales tax. Most of this is sales tax funded, although there are a few utility employees in this group as well.
Well, John and I would say the reason I segmented that is because it's not an all or nothing,
Correct. Yeah.
right? And I would say, and John and myself may disagree in this, there was no budget assigned directly to this situation that John's addressing, other than the contractual ones we knew about. So there was no specific budget set aside for this type of.
Correct.
Yeah.
And to the mayor's point, those kind of first two groups, the contractual and then the additional responsibilities, that should be easily absorbed in the existing budget, in their departments. It's the others that may work and may not work. You know, so there might need to be an adjustment. That would be the next phase if the council was okay with this, is to come back with a budget amendment where needed. I haven't done an individual department analysis to, because I spent all my time on my sheet of many colors, as the mayor calls it.
Joseph in the colored coat, his is John in the colored spreadsheets. What questions you have of John, council? Mr. Pulver.
So I guess you said that may or may not be. So this is the worst case scenario is the 19 for this year.
Well, that'd be the recommendation.
Sure.
Yeah. So this is folks who are 6% or more low currently.
So
yeah, what's recommended are those are the 11 people plus the other. So there's 14 technically, but these are the 11 that are in the I'm recommending, but I don't, the council gets to make up their mind, obviously.
right. Well, I'm just saying this would be the worst case that you wouldn't come back next time and say, oh, I need $40,000.
No, I'm
this
not.
is- yeah.
These are the employees we're talking about. There's no one I would add to the list until July.
That's Pulver's point.
Yeah.
In July, because there's a limit on this of 3%.
Mhm.
And you heard John say some may be 6%. So yeah, there's most likely he's going to be coming back as part of the budget process and asking for more for these same individuals.
True, but I guess for the current fiscal year, the true impact is less than 19, because if some departments can absorb it, I guess that's my point, is that when he comes back next time, it's not going to be, for this current fiscal year, it's not going to be more than 19.
Yes, I misunderstood the question. Yes, the departmental impact, the maximum would be the 19. It would likely be less than that.
Okay.
But let me point this out, because sometimes we look at this and this isn't a negative comment, it's just an informational comment, is that 20,000 automatically is 40,000 next year's budget.
Right.
It may not be absorbed in the budget with inflation. So yeah, this year it may. John hasn't done that analysis that I'm aware of. I think there might be potential room, but I just want to point out that, yeah, it's a half a year. This year it might be 20,000. But next year it's already committed. It's 40,000, and it may be an increase in budget because of what may be available this year will probably be eaten up by inflation. So it's actually committing to $40,000 increase in the budget, most likely going forward, plus whatever else John brings.
Yeah, that's
And
an
do
excellent
it.
point.
Just wanted to point that out for informational purposes as you digest this. Councilmember Dowpaz.
Thanks for putting this together, John. One thing that I seem to recall from our previous budget discussions in last year's budgeting process is we had a conversation around mid-year increases and whether that would be looked at. And I tried mightily to find what day, what meeting, what conversation it was, but I remember pretty vividly that we made a decision that we would move forward on an annual basis moving forward with increases. And that we had this time for 2 to 3, 4 years where wages were going up so quickly that it seemed very justified to do a 6-month rotation. And I seem to remember, and I could be slightly wrong, but I seem to remember that the conversation we had in the last budgeting cycle was, from here on out, unless the market goes nuts, we won't do that. We will just stick to the annual increases in the yearly budgeting process. And so my perspective, I mean, the people that are slightly behind right now, we've always been committed to the employees, and we've never been unfair to them in past budgeting cycles. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't just plan on giving them increases to get them to the market rate that they need to be in the next cycle, in the next budgeting cycle. Other than the contractual that we are talking about, of course, we got to get those people up to speed, and the people that have taken on additional responsibilities. I think those two are a for sure. And I think the third component is probably just wait until the next cycle and make sure, based off of the market study, that we get them there.
Any other comments, council? Okay, so what John is asking for here is a motion to schedule any necessary budget amendments to future yeah, that's right, isn't it, John?
Yeah, because we would
Motion to
have to come
schedule any
back.
necessary budget amendments to a future city council meeting, council member motions. So what I would say, council, just if I heard you correctly, and I'm not sure I did, but I may have, is that you make a motion to allow increases for those, for lack of a better term, category 1 and 2, which are contractual. And I'm not saying promotional, but those who took on additional responsibility. And that the third segment would be considered as part of the budgeting process for fiscal 2026. So is there a motion to approve the adjustments for segments 1 and 2?
Mayor, I move that we approve the adjustments that are in the promotion category and contractual category based on the discussion that we've had tonight, and addressing all of the other employee situations at the next budgeting cycle.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Severing. Do we have any further discussion? Ladies first, Councilmember Watson.
I'm fine with this suggestion. I would just ask if there was a way that we could communicate that to all the many employees that maybe are expecting it to come every 6 months, that it's not anything, we don't even know who it's for. It's not anything to do with them or their performance, but just that we've decided to, from now on, always do this annually. Or is that not the consensus? I mean, if it is, I think the communication could help that smooth over.
Okay, John, can you answer that question?
So I think we can communicate it. We do have staff meeting after council meeting every week. And then I would probably, what we'll do in the future, because I think it's so good to keep the council aware of it, is I'd still like to do the study and maybe just keep you informed. And then maybe bracket that parameter that I think Councilman Daup has that says if the market goes crazy, maybe we need to know, I mean, is that 8%? Is that 20%? Like, how do we know? And just so we can dial it in a little more to plan for it a little better.
Councilmember Severing.
So I'm just curious, Councilwoman Watson, so are we talking about just for my clarity, okay? So are we talking about looking at mid-year for contractual and promotional kinds of mid-year increases? Always?
Okay, that wasn't a question for me, but let me answer what I
That's
think
okay.
might help.
Go ahead,
I
Councilmember
think what
Dalpaz.
I think what Councilwoman Watson was trying to say to John is, can we communicate that these increases are intended always to be on an annual basis? You know, so the 11 individuals that are on this spreadsheet that we're taking a look at, which are unnamed, by the way, so it's completely anonymous to us as city council. Is there just a way to convey to the employees, hey, this is something to expect mentally, is that we will always do an annual increase and we will always strive to be as fair as possible in that annual increase, and just make it a conversation that, hey, the last few years were just an incredible few years of wage growth, and growth has finally tapered off a little bit. If you kind of hear about jobs reports and economics and what's going on in the world, it truly is leveling off, even though there still is wage growth right now.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I'm just thinking that if there were somebody who took on additional responsibilities, would it be worth having a discussion about that at a mid-year time?
Well,
So we could
I
make
think
it a
I
possibility.
think that's always on the table,
Okay.
because I motioned and we had a second to allowing the promotions to get their increase right now, and allowing the contractual people that, you know, you hired Joe at, you know, $50,000 and you promised him to be at 55,000 by 6 months if he's performing his duties, type of thing.
Okay, I just wanted to make that there was clarification to it.
And I would suggest on those two things that Councilmember Dalpaz just mentioned, that we probably understand those are going to be probably occurring on a fairly regular basis, and that we build a small amount into the budget, and we let John deal with the mayor, whoever that may be, and that's something the council doesn't have to debate. I think we have enough trust. And let me just say this, I have seen the list, and excluded from that were John, who would fit into the category of the 11 people, Dave, I think several other of our department heads. So it's not like there's an enrichment strategy there, so to speak. I think they're just trying to do the right thing and make sure that our employees are taken care of. But I would suggest, I think it's understood, according to Councilmember Dalpaz, that money is available. And the only discussion would be is if the market moves quickly. Other than that, we have John work with the mayor and make the contractual and the promotional adjustments in a fair and equitable manner. Is that the assumption as you saw it?
Yeah, that's a good.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Pulver.
So I guess one's not a question per se, but a comment. I think we did, you know, all the budget cycles that I've been through, through the Citizen Budget Committee, I think and all the training that we've went through for that, when it comes to salary adjustments and the database that the city uses, I think it's awesome. At the same time, I think we're there, and I think, you know, what we're talking about, and I wanted to make sure I was understood the motion correctly. We're not approving it. Because we're saying, yeah, go do that, but we still have to approve the budget change next time, right?
Well, if there's a necessary budget adjustment to
Right.
meet the motion, that would come back. John needs to do further investigation to see if these can be covered. I think in the contractual ones we're talking about, those are in the budget. But if not, you're right.
Okay.
A budget amendment would have to come back.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we were saying yes to go do that, but yes, it's still got to come back to get, okay.
That's a good
If a
clarification.
budget adjustment is necessary, correct. Okay, any other further questions? Then we have a motion on the table to approve I'm just going to simplify this, category 1 and category 2, which is promotion and contractual, to proceed along with those. And if a budget amendment is necessary, it'll be brought back. I would ask if we could consider that, in addition to that motion, that in the future, as we talked about, that in category 1 and category 2, that can be done without council approval as long as the money's in the budget.
You
So
want
no-
me to amend my motion for that?
It's
to-
up to you.
So I amend my previous motion to include that in the future, in future years, that John Call and the acting mayor have the authority to pay promotions and contractual type items that were offered to lure people for employment, et cetera.
So are you saying I'm not the real mayor? I'm just an acting one?
Well,
Just acting like I'm the mayor, council member? Gomez?
yeah, I don't know. I guess
think
I
you're
was
right.
thinking,
I'm with you.
you don't act like a mayor. You definitely perform as a mayor. So thanks for
Okay,
pointing that out.
Just a little lightheartedness.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second to that amended motion?
I'm sorry, did we have to add into that? As long as it's within the budget, the department budget?
As long as it's within the budget.
Okay.
Just to be
I think it's a
safe.
given that anything had required, but that'd be fine. Okay, so we got that. We have a second to that motion. Amended
It's
motion.
amended, it would be approved by, did you second it originally? So you'd need to be okay with the amendment.
Councilmember Pulver, did you second the motion previously?
I'm okay with that motion.
Okay, so you're second the amending motion.
Second.
Any further
Second amendment.
discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Thank you very much. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move on to item number 6 is presented by Councilmember Pulver. This is a discussion on the implementation of a new policy for sidewalk snow clearing. Councilmember Pulver, proceed.
Okay, so it's fairly simple. So in the code, it's 8-4-1. And it's really, there's two things I wanted to talk about. One was, right now in the code, it says promptly that you have to remove it. And I swear I can't find it to validate my memory, but I swear it was 24 hours at one point. But I think, so there's that one aspect of it that I want to change that to 24 hours because, promptly could mean anything. So to me, that's something that should be nailed down a little bit. 24 hours after a snowstorm, yeah, it's pretty reasonable that by then you should have the snow cleared off your sidewalk, especially if it's snowed for 24 hours straight and you barely can keep up with your driveway, much less the sidewalk. And then there's been a lot of issues with cul-de-sacs, especially in the Old Town area, where the cul-de-sacs are wicked small. And when I say that, it barely fits a fire engine in there. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. And they meaning snow removal crews, have done their I don't know what your word to use without swearing, but they're doing their darndest to not destroy things, because if you look at a cul-de-sac that's really small, you got to put it somewhere. And there's driveways, fences, mailboxes, and all sorts of stuff in the way. Utility, boxes. Anyway, Mr. Swanson's lives in a cul-de-sac. He understands, and probably a bigger one than some of the citizens that have asked for my help. So, people want to comply. They want to make sure that they're following the code, and the folks that don't care, just don't do it. But in this case, I think it should, at least the code should reflect that in small cul-de-sacs, or honestly, I'm gonna say all cul-de-sacs that have massive mounds of snow that no one can put anywhere but in somebody's front yard, that they should be exempt from that policy. So that would be my two recommendations, is to update the promptly with 24 hours and then exempt cul-de-sacs in massive snow years to not comply or be exempt.
What's the definition of a massive snow year?
A snow year where you can put your Jeep on top of a mountain of snow.
So that would be
That was
determined by one of our
I would
local
say
citizens?
that you cannot put a snow blower through the mound of snow. I mean, I don't want to say it's obvious, but it's one of those things that if you have a 10-foot pile of snow that you can't get rid of.
Yeah, I
Pick a
understand
number.
the issue. I just don't know how to define it and,
Or you could just say period, exempt
but,
of
you
period.
know, it'd be an interesting thing, and you've heard me maybe say this before, but I remember taking business law up at Weber State. And the professor asked on the test, he said, if you haven't timely cleared your sidewalk in front of your home and somebody slips and falls and hits their head and they're knocked out, what do you do? He says, drag them in front of the neighbor's house because you're in deep trouble if you haven't cleared your sidewalk. So to me, I'd wonder what the legal aspect of not clearing a sidewalk is. And if the city says you don't have to clear your sidewalk for X period of time, are we taking on the legal responsibility? Just asking the question. I see the problem. I just don't know how you define massive snow year.
Then, I mean, for the most part, everybody does it. And I think there's small pockets that actually have tried to do it and can't.
Yeah.
And they've asked for that exemption. And so,
I know what you're talking about.
So-
Fences have been pushed over. Could we do this, Councilmember Pulver? Could you work with Mr. Call? See if there's some reasonable definition that can be utilized and actually find out what our legal responsibility may be. Because there seems to be some, I don't know, John, I'm not an attorney, but something that puts liability on the homeowner if they're not clearing their sidewalk. Now, granted, you know, most people I see, they don't go up into the cul-de-sac and come back out and walk. They're pretty much walking there. But could you do that and see if there's something reasonable that that could be utilized? Sometimes the other thing is just using common sense, knowing that it can't be cleared and
we work for the government, don't we? We can't use that.
well, maybe
That was
there
a
could be a
joke.
redefinition. There
According-
could be a
what?
redefinition.
Yeah.
Or something of that nature, but let's maybe see what some other cities are doing because, you know, I understand the problem. I just don't know how you define massive snow and stuff. Councilmember Dalpaz?
Can we, Councilman Pulver, can we get maybe an example of what one of these smaller cul-de-sacs that you're referring to is, just so I can visualize it? The only one that I can think of in recent history that I've heard of, and I'm not the public works liaison right now, so it doesn't surprise me and it hasn't been snowing this year.
Yeah,
So
this
it doesn't
goes back.
surprise me. But I admire your preparation to be prepared maybe for next year.
No, it's just that I'm a year off.
Yeah.
but anyway.
So the only one that I was aware of that was problematic in the last couple of really big snow years was, I believe it was Cody and Lisa Johnson.
Right.
They had emailed us and they were having issues with the snow going into their fence and there was, you know, problems.
That's the one.
That's the one. Oh, okay, then that's all I needed to know. So any others that you can cite? Just that
No,
one?
just from experience of those that own a lot might not be improved, or developers that have complained that they don't own the sidewalk, but yes, you do. You do have to maintain it. There's a lot of little intricacies around my neighborhood that have just blossomed, and I just kind of wanted to nail down certain aspects of it. But
Thank
you know, the promptly means to me, you know, I at some point you need to get out of your driveway. Sidewalk comes next, you know, and I understand the mayor, but if there's 4 feet of snow in the sidewalk, nobody's walking on it, you know, so, but.
However, they don't want to walk in the street either.
And
See, I'm
that's-
just the opposite of you. I
Well-
usually clear my sidewalk first because I know the liability of not clearing it off. And just to be considerate of, because there are a lot of people, as you've seen, walking along, you know, that area up there. But if you could come back with some suggestions and Councilmember Dalpaz, I would tell you, I used to live in the area of a cul-de-sac and in massive snow years where the resident drove his Jeep up on top of the snow. It was ugly. I mean, literally Public Works had to they'd get a backhoe and a dump truck and haul out the snow because there was no place else to put it. You know, it was pushed up against the sidewalk. You couldn't get through. So it's an issue. I'm just looking for, you know, what a reasonable solution may be, because if you exempt everybody, they're not going to clear it. So can you do that, Councilmember Pulver? Would that be?
Yes, I'm trying to not laugh with Blake's giving me.
Is Blake laughing over there?
No, never.
Just curious to know what your definition of massive snow was.
Well, that's what I was saying. I used his term, massive snow, which was defined as the Jeep
Yeah.
up on the top.
Okay.
So that was my definition.
It was just supposed to be a moment of lightheartedness.
Okay, we like lightheartedness.
Just
Okay,
lightheartedness.
we need it. Okay, is that fair?
Yes.
Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Item number 7, discussion or an action to approve the North Ogden City Youth Council funding change proposal. This will be presented by Councilmember Watson. Councilmember Watson, if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. I have a slideshow.
Councilmember Watson, could you maybe get the microphone
microphone.
closer?
Yep.
Thank
Is that better? Okay. So I just wanted to give you a recap of some of the things we've been doing this year. I was asked to take this on when I first joined the city council in January of last year. So it's been a year and I've had a really good time doing it. It's been really fun and rewarding. It's great to see these teenagers really blossom and turn into leaders and watching them grow. It's been a joy, my favorite part of being part of city council. So I've really been glad that this was given to me as an assignment. On this first slide, the bottom right, that's me on my birthday. I was at the youth conference with the youth on my birthday and they sang to me. On the left, that picture is we're driving to one of the conferences, but Shelley on the left there is my co-advisor, has been my co-advisor. She's a longtime friend of mine and was gracious enough to accept my invitation to be an advisor with me last year in January when I asked her to join. And I'm really grateful for her service. We've had a really good time doing it. She's put a lot of time into it. The reason I'm bringing this presentation to you now is because she's recently come to me to say that she's quit. She's come because she has too much on her plate. She's trying to teach lessons and add substitute teaching in to her already busy schedule so that she can contribute to her family and volunteering at this level. The volunteering has been pushed out of her plate, too much to juggle for her. And so I'm coming to you because I would love to see this program continue, and I'm legally not allowed to be with the children, with the youth on my own. So the question remains, what do we do with this group and how can we make this work moving forward? Next slide. Thank you. So I just wanted to go over 3 different things. One, the service we've done at city events, to the community events we've done, and then the leadership we've been able to benefit from, the leadership conferences we've been able to do. So this slide is the city events that we've participated in. We've participated in all the major city events, and we've in a lot of times done a lot of the legwork for these city events. I mean, there are 25 members of youth members in addition to Shelley and myself over this past year who've been able to participate in the service. And so whether we're hiding Easter eggs at the Easter egg hunt or serving hot chocolate cups at the North Pole, we put a lot of time into making those city events come forward. So there's pictures here from the Easter egg hunt with the Kiwanis. We participated in the luau, the trunk or treat, and the North Pole. The North Pole usually hires Northern Ice to serve their hot chocolate, and we did that for, I don't have the total, but a fraction of what the cost was for them to normally hire Northern Ice. And we served quite a bit more, probably 30% more than Northern Ice did last year as well. We served 5,700 cups of hot chocolate over 4 days. So that was a big job. That was a lot of work, but really fun time, and the kids did great. Next slide. We've also done a lot for the community. Here's a picture of us. We did we had an entry in the Cherry Days Parade for the City Council and the Youth Council combined. We also were able to come up with a collaboration sponsorship with the Major Brent Taylor Foundation. And so they donate sponsorship, and we give service. We help at 2 of their events. One is a leadership conference, which I don't have pictured here, and another one is we put up signs to lead hikers up to the flag. So those volunteer opportunities have strengthened the community, but also it's helped us receive a sponsorship there. Next slide. We have been able to participate in a lot of leadership conferences throughout the year. The first one at the top left, we were able to go to Local Officials Day at the Capitol and eat lunch with the mayor. So that was get a tour of the Capitol. At the top right, we were able to go to the Youth Council Leadership Training Conference at Utah State. Then the bottom left, we did the Brent Taylor BT5 Leadership Conference. And then in the summer, I was able to obtain another a grant sponsor called Teens Lifting Teens, TLT, and that grant was able to get us in almost for free to another leadership conference we weren't planning on attending, but that's the bottom left, called Teens Leading Teens. So that grant has expectations for us as well. We participate in near-peer mentoring, community outreach, service learning, and go to at least 2 leadership conferences a year to be able to receive that money. And just in summary, the youth have really grown as leaders. Our group has also grown. We've learned a lot as advisors. I should probably stop saying we because it's now just me, which is really sad, but we've put a lot of time into building up this program, and now it's a thriving program. When I first was given this program in January, there was 3 members of the group, 3 youth members of the group, and they hadn't met for 8 months. And we met 26 times this past year, and we have 25 youth, and it's just really a thriving group. The kids love it. I don't have to bribe them to come. They really participate and help and love to be a part of it. We're trying to keep up with the growth. We're trying to always get sponsors. We're trying to always get volunteers. I've asked everyone I know to be an advisor and just not had a lot of luck. And so not only that, but we've been helping at the city events. So the ask is, after talking with John and the mayor, that we've learned a lot. And over the past year, we've spent from 250 to 300 hours, each of us. And we've learned a lot and been able to make things more efficient and scale some things back. And we estimate that we'll be each spending 150 to 200 hours in this next upcoming year, which is still a great deal more than any other service that I do in my religious efforts or in any other way. And I certainly appreciate those volunteers that I have benefited from in my life. I've been a coach. I've been a youth leader in church. I've been volunteering in the schools quite a bit, and I love volunteering. This program has become bigger than any of my experience volunteering in the past, and we do plan to scale some of that back. But we also are suggesting that we're saving some employee hours by coming to a lot of these city events. Now that Cherry Days is, we don't have the same type of committee as we did before. I'm expecting the Youth Council to step in and help out a lot and be a lot of the legwork there as well. And so in talking with John and the mayor, I guess the advice was, let's make it similar to more of a city council or planning commission paid service. And see if that will continue this longevity of the program, not squelch the progress we've made and avoid burnout. As we've already seen, I've burnt out my co-advisor. And I personally spend a lot more time on youth council than I do on city council. And I feel like I put a lot of time into city council. And so I just would hate for this program to die out because there's not an adult willing to put together the volunteer hours to be able to have that too deep legal protection. So again, this comes out to around $15 to $20 an hour. And that would be competitive with a substitute teaching. If you want to have good leaders, as youth, if you want to teach good leaders, then you've got to have a good advisor to teach those youth to become leaders. And we can't just pick up just anybody. We need to have someone who's willing to be, if any of you have raised teenagers, try raising 25 of them at once. So again, I love it. I really do. But it has been overwhelming, and I've already overwhelmed one person. And so I'm concerned about what to do moving forward. Just so you're aware, a lot of other councils in the area that we meet with regularly do have a stipend attached to it. Others have a employee position that's put towards that job. And so I'd be happy to, look at other options, but this was the one solution that I wanted to bring forth with this situation now. So I plan to make a motion tonight to introduce an advisor stipend of $250 a month per advisor, and no matter who those advisors are. Then I also would be willing to bring back reports regularly of metrics. If there's a lower interest, then we can have a lower level of need, meaning a lower cost. Right now, we haven't had a cap, and we can do that. I only have 2 seniors, and so, even after May, I'll still have 23 people, and I don't know if there's anyone that deserves being kicked out of the club. So anyway, just wanted to hear your questions and discussion on it before I make that motion.
Councilmember Pulver?
So I guess the first question is, how much is the city council or the city paying already? Looking at it's $6,200. And I guess that's the one thing. So that's what's used for that is the conferences, et cetera, correct?
We also have to rent 15 passenger vans, which are pretty pricey, around $600. And that's the most of it, right?
Okay.
I'm trying to even think of something that's other than that.
Yeah, I think my discussion with the Councilmember Watson was, the decision is, what's a volunteer position versus a paid position? Because if it's a paid position, I get it. If it's a volunteer position, you got a lot of volunteers, right? So I think the first thing the council has to decide is, what is the position associated with the youth council? And then you can go from there. That was my point, I think, that I made to you earlier tonight is,
You're right. I mean, last time I talked to you, you said, don't bring it up like an option, bring it up like it's
well, yeah, if that's your
necessity.
passion. That's exactly what I said. If you have a passion for something, bring it up with
Just say it that
supported
way.
facts. And yeah, I admit to that discussion, that you shouldn't be afraid to bring something forward that you feel very passionate about. And I stand by that, by the way, with all council members. Okay, what other questions do you have for Councilmember Watson? Councilmember Dalpaz?
I'm sorry. I know her name and I missed it.
Shelley.
Shelley. Okay. If this were put into place, will she be retained or is she just done no matter what?
I asked her that too, and she didn't answer. So I can't promise anything. And I also didn't tell her the amount that John suggested that I put in here. And so she doesn't know an amount, but I do know she's making less than $15 to $20 an hour doing her regular substitute teaching. And so I'm hoping this will persuade her. But she did say that I would be able to try to beg her back after I have this conversation with you tonight.
Councilmember Pulver?
The one thing I did see that I don't think is proper is to do backdating. It was a volunteer position. That's the way it was gone into. I think moving forward, maybe. I mean, if we need to talk more about that, but that's just my opinion on that. But I mean, as we were just talking about, employees and how we need to retain services, I think the youth council did a lot of stuff this year. I think they did great. I mean, to be honest, there's no Northern Ice people here, but I thought the cocoa was better than it was last year. But so I'm just saying, I think it's a good thing, whether or not it's now a permanent position versus a volunteer I don't know. I haven't still thinking, I guess. I think it's something that, do I spend more time literally on the meetings, or do I spend more time on doing other things with the budget committee and all the other things that, the illities that come with city council? Showing up for interviews and stuff like that. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that you sign up for it when you become, not an elected official, but when you decide to go serve on something, the planning commission, something like that, you may or may not know what you're getting involved with. But if it's truly a volunteer position, then maybe it does need to be scaled back. I mean, that's the only other option but anyway, thoughts.
Okay, any other questions for Councilmember Watson? Councilmember Severing.
I don't have a question per se, but having spent a good part of my life involved with teenagers, I think I don't know if you can, I mean, I know we're talking budget, so there is numbers, but the impact that an advisor or a coach can have and make an impact for lifetime. And having been part of that situation, it was hard. I mean, we had individuals involved, and it got to be too much for so many of them. So there's a part of me that would want to, do we need to make this decision tonight? Can we think about this? I'd like to think about it a little bit more, maybe make a decision on the 28th.
I mean, I'm hoping to beg Shelley back before our next event. So I would hope that it could be today. I tried to put as much information in the packet as I could, but if it needs to be later, that's fine.
Well, it's just nice to be able to, it's one thing to read something in the material and then to be able to hear the passion. Okay, to be able to hear that passion, because initially I was thinking, we're making adjustments with, potentially adjustments with salary. We're looking at not knowing exactly what the future is going to be economically. So at least initially I was a little bit apprehensive. But the more I thought about, would I want my kids to be involved with Christina Watson? And I would say, yeah. I think that would make a significant difference. So I don't know if I'm ready to motion, because I think maybe I see JD and Ryan kind of looking like, maybe they had a comment or.
Councilmember Barker, I think would
Yeah.
like to make a comment.
I was thinking a lot about this as well, and I know some of us up here on the council, I'm not included in this group, that were involved in youth council at one time. I think your wife was. It is a lot of work, and as Councilmember Watson mentioned, there's a lot of hours this last year. I'm not opposed to saying let's give them a stipend. I would like to say, if we do the stipend, that there's some, not requirements, but there's some expectations that you will be so involved in. I mean, there's so much that's going to be done. Because if it becomes like the mayor says, you're no longer a volunteer, now there's expectations if you're getting a stipend. And that's my opinion. But I'm not opposed to, I think if we're running volunteers away because we're overworking them, then maybe we need to have this conversation.
I think it comes down to, is it a volunteer or is it
Correct.
because, if not, you've got other volunteers. And that was my point. I maybe wasn't clear tonight when I said, that's I think the decision the council has to make is it a paid position or is it a volunteer position? John, I would ask this question: if it's a paid or a stipend position, in today's world, you have Boy Scout leaders and Girl Scout leaders. There's usually a background check done for people who are being volunteered or paid, particularly with youth.
We do background checks on all volunteers that work with youth. So all of our coaches and stuff are typically volunteers, and they get
But
backgrounds.
what about youth council?
It's already been checked.
So we do that. Good.
Yeah.
Good. So where do you want to go from here, council? The item on the agenda tonight was seeking a motion to schedule a necessary budget amendment to a future city council meeting. Councilmember Dalpass?
So I'm not ready for a motion yet, but I came into the meeting tonight thinking, this has to be a volunteer position. That was just where my head was. And I do appreciate Councilwoman Watson's words and her passion and everything that she's explaining to us. I am sure, especially in Councilwoman Watson's world, that this is very urgent, and it is, because it involves our youth. But I wonder if we can potentially put a call out on the city page that says we have an open advisor position. It's a volunteer position. We're looking for someone passionate to work with the youth on a volunteer basis, I'm just wondering, but
250 hours a year, right?
yes,
You wanna
for
include that.
approximately 250 hours a year, if you need to say it. Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking so they understand the expectation,
Yeah.
because I would imagine that in many volunteer situations, and particularly this one, no one imagined, it's like we had the volunteer for Cherry Days quit, right? Because there were so many hours involved.
Yeah.
So it's the, you can find a volunteer that's, you feel can lead the youth and do the things that are outlined by Councilmember Watson. More power to you. I'm not saying that that would be highly probable, though. But
Yeah.
Councilmember Pulver, sorry.
So, we were talking about burnout and things like that. I think even if, I don't know, I'm not going to put words in the Cherry Days committee, but I don't think it would have mattered if they got paid a crap ton of money. I think they would have still been burned out. But the biggest thing I think is the passion, and Christina's done it. I mean, you don't just go from zero to what she's done without some craziness. I don't know what you want to call it, but I did. So at the same time, though, you have to think about what the position should be. And I'm struggling still. I think it should be volunteer, but at the same time, do you have to garner, money to get somebody to show up? I don't know. I mean, if not, then you have to scale back, and then you lose the passion, and it's not the same. And I don't want to do that, but at the same time, if you double, that's basically what we're doing. We're doubling the youth council's budget. Is that what the city needs or requires versus something else for $6,000 to help the SWAT team, garner 1,500 kids as opposed to 25? I'm being devil's advocate, but I'm not. Anyway. Thoughts?
Councilmember Watson?
If I could just add to a couple of the thoughts that have been brought up. Honestly, I'm running into a similar situation as Shelley, and I'll just be vulnerable here that being a stay-at-home mom isn't affordable anymore. And so if that changes for me in my life, then that would naturally turn back a lot of my time that I spend volunteering. But I certainly could see some things being scaled back. The problem is that a lot of the things that we added on this year that weren't done previous years has to do with our commitments to our sponsors. So if we were to take away our TLT grant, then we could just go to one conference a year instead of two, which would take some time, alleviate some time. If we were to remove our sponsorship with the Brent Taylor Foundation, then we could potentially stop providing service to those two community events. Honestly, though, probably the bigger things that were the hardest for us to obtain were the city events. And so if we scale back, and it's up to me, it would be scaling back from city events. So what would that look like for the city? Would they have to have more staff attend, provide the hot chocolate, or lay out the Easter eggs, or, Cherry Days, luau, whatever it is? And then also, what happens? So that's, one way that we could take it. We could scale it back, and then it wouldn't be the same level of service, but would that still be satisfactory? The other point I want to bring up is that if we don't find a high caliber individual willing to put in many hours, maybe 6 hours a week, 3 to 6 hours a week to do this on their time, I mean, on the times that we need, right? So it could be overnight conferences, it could be evenings, it could be after school meetings at the high school, right after school, and people who are available during the day. Anyway, if we don't find someone, then that would leave this program to have to shut down. Or unless there's a recommendation that we could use an employee, but I wonder if that would be even more costly than doing the stipend. In a lot of other cities, they have, say someone from recreation, an employee of the city participating in all these events. So that's something that we could think about as well. But I can stall for a short amount of time and try to pull parents. We're going to visit the Capitol and watch legislation on the 29th of January, and I have one parent willing to go with me. And I need 3 adults to drive. I have one parent willing to go with me. Again, Shelley's quit already. And I have another parent who says, I'd like to, let me see if I can rework my schedule so that I can make it. It's during the day. And so if I can get my 3 drivers, then I can invite all of the kids who are able to go to come with me. We have our conference coming up in March, and that's a 3-day conference where we receive training on how to be a youth council. And I would need someone to be there with me. And so these things we need to decide quickly, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Watson. Councilmember Delpaz, did you have your hand up?
I won't motion it, but I want to hear what everyone has to say. I kind of feel somewhat similar to Councilman Severing. There's just, I don't feel ready to make the decision. It feels like a big decision. And I'd like to postpone it until the next city council meeting, and also potentially ask that maybe John works to get it on this as a potential. He puts it on the Facebook page and says, hey, we're looking for a volunteer to be in this position. Here's the description of it. And maybe by a miracle, we get somebody to apply and is the perfect fit to be doing this with Councilwoman Watson. So it's kind of my recommendation to move towards postponement.
Let me just say, I think we're going to have a special city council meeting probably next week to approve some beer licenses in the city. So we could add it to the agenda then, if that's quick
Yeah,
enough.
because that could add to the urgency, and I'm okay with next week if that's what it is.
I don't know when that special council meeting would be. I'd imagine it'd be next Tuesday, John.
It can't be Wednesday because that's when planning commission's in the room. So Tuesday would make a lot of sense.
So, what's the motion then?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
You know what my motion is going to
Okay,
be.
go ahead. Yeah.
Might as well try. Well, I'll motion that we approve a stipend for 2 advisors at $250 a month, moving forward, starting January this month.
Okay, we have a second to that motion.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Barker. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'm just going to go down the row here. Councilmember Severing,
Yes.
Councilmember Pulver,
No.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Councilmember Delpaz,
No.
Councilmember Barker.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
So what does that mean for next week?
Doesn't
Doesn't need to
apparently
be
doesn't have
addressed.
to be on the agenda next week. We'll just talk about beer licenses.
Planning commission was this week.
Okay, let's move on to I guess you better bring a budget amendment, John, before we commit to it.
What? Sorry.
Better bring a budget amendment, I guess.
Yeah, we'll bring that back. So probably next week we'll have the council set a hearing for the budget because anytime we open it up, we do that. and I'll get with Jamie on the date for that. So,
This doesn't fit under a category we already have open, like in capital projects.
no, we need to put it under the YCC budget.
Okay.
So, and then just as a clarification, just because this question might come up as you think about the meeting, there, in theory, there is a, sorry. It's totally okay for Councilwoman Watson to have voted because any conflict about receiving the stipend was disclosed and openly discussed. Does that make sense? So there's no reason why she would have had to have recused herself, under the strict reading of the law, just
Thank
in
you.
case it comes up.
I also would be a highly proponent of it, no matter if it's taken away from me tomorrow, so has nothing to do with me.
So, and I guess clarification, did we vote for backdating as well?
No.
Didn't say. Okay.
I didn't vote for that. I didn't.
Okay. We now move into if there's any further public comments online, John, or in person this evening.
President, thank you for your hard work tonight. The decisions are difficult to make. I do think you missed the boat, though, on the stipend. As you know, I was involved with council for 10 years and very involved with youth council. Went to all of the leadership conferences, both at Utah State, down at the Capitol. There have been many years in the past where there were more than 20 kids that were involved, and it was all done on a volunteer basis. The only difference that's happening now is that the advisors, and I love your passion, and we can never do enough with the kids, right? No matter how much we do, it won't be enough. But what we've done is we have self-programmed ourselves into where we now have to have a paid position to have the advisors that we need. For decades, this program has been able to survive on volunteers alone, including when we had as many kids involved as we have now. It did not need somebody to be paid to do it. As is often the case, it seems in today's society, we overprogram ourselves. We're going too many places in too many directions, trying to do too many things. Right now, as wonderful as the youth council program is, it's overprogrammed, and that's why we're having to pay somebody to be a part of it. I think that's inappropriate. There was no discussion this evening about scaling back. There were a couple of brief mentions, and I know Councilmember Watson, that you're not happy with that. But the reality is the number of activities have more than doubled from just what they were a year and a half ago, more than doubled. The burnout is there because of the number of things that are being done, not because of the inherent nature of the program itself. It's a wonderful program. I love your passion. There's a lot for the kids to learn, but I think we're doing too much. And expecting the residents to pay for that I think is inappropriate. So thank you.
I'm back. Susan Clements, North Ogden citizen. It's good to be back. This is the first time I've been in this building for city council. Thank you. Like Phil said, thank you for your service. The council, John, all employees that are here, thank you. I appreciate you taking up the conversation about Barker Park. And we're working on it a little bit at a time, baby steps. That's what we're going to have to do. It's a big park. How many acres, Mayor?
30, about 30.
30 acres?
I think it's 40
Approximately.
plus total.
Wow.
It's undeveloped, I think, 30, isn't it?
That's a lot. And it's going to take us a while to get it all done. But thank you for taking, well, this isn't the first step, but this is an important step. The snow clearing. My backyard is one of those older, it's not an old, but it's an old cul-de-sac. And yeah, the snow, my granddaughter and I were out there one year and we were actually digging out snow caves to play in. That's how big they can get. I would say, Councilmember Pulver, probably 2 feet It'd be the maximum, and then you don't have to clear it up. I can't see anybody trying to go over a 2-foot thing of ice and snow. So if they do that, they deserve whatever they get. So again, thank you for what you're doing tonight and each Tuesday night.
Anyone online, John?
No raised hands, Mayor.
Okay, anyone else this evening? All right. Any comments from staff? Scott? Lieutenant Boyette? Right? I see no comments. Council? Oh, John, sorry.
By way of information, the project to widen Washington Boulevard, not Washington, Lakeview Drive, which is 450 east as it heads up to the stoplight on 3100, is moving forward. We've selected an acquisition agent and will likely be doing partial purchases and maybe even a full purchase, depending on what the appraisal agent tells us, for 2 homes at that intersection of 3100 and 450 east. We're not going to give more information than that, just so that people don't start freaking out until the agent reaches out to them. But we've got a design and they'll be reaching out here soon, so people won't have to wait. And then I'm going to send the council an informal survey via a Google form about Village at Providence Point, and just some things that planning and Scott and I have been talking about. How do we learn and grow and include stuff in documents in the future to just help us grow and improve. So anyways, that'll come out probably tomorrow at this point. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you, John. Any other comments from council? Councilmember Pulver?
Just so that the council is aware, kind of keeping staff aware, but the getting finalized, the Citizen Budget Committee, all of the names so far, it looks like you'll probably start the 3rd week in February, but a solid group so far. I mean, there's a lot of people that already kind of sent out an email that had the budget from last year, and there's several people like, I got a lot of questions. Like, well, that's good. So so far so good. I don't think there's any no's yet, because last year we had several people that had to bow out because of whatever situation. Someone like got a new job for the FBI or something, and she had to back out. But anyway, other than that, that was Susan Kilborn. I don't know if she's listening, but anyways, so that should be going pretty good, and we'll kind of see what direction the folks want to head. I know each year deep dive is always a good thing, but we haven't really come up with anything in the past 2 years that was jaw-dropping. And I think, there's some other things that some intel, I don't know if that's the right word, from other locations that I might want to think about. So.
And I would ask you to get with John. We had a conversation about the approach. We think going through all the yellow things is probably not valuable time. We want to take a kind of a more strategic approach. So if you'd get with John, he could give you some thoughts that we had, at least share with you, and try to make it as meaningful as possible for those that are involved. So, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Council? Okay, I see none. I have no comments. We'll look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Meeting is adjourned.